Last week, we talked about whether or not it's a good idea to start your business right now in the middle of a global pandemic and in the middle of an economic crisis. Most of us said yes. So make sure you watch last week's episode to see why we said yes. And so today I wanted to just dive into that a little bit more deeply, because apart from looking at the economic climate and things like that, we also have to think about money, because some businesses take a little bit more money to fund than others. So I wanted to ask you guys, because obviously a lot of us have been made redundant, a lot of us are unemployed. So how do you start your business? How do you fund a business with little to no income?
Oh boy, that's a big question. There are lots of ways in which you can do it. So some stuff, I'll be honest, I haven't necessarily tried. I haven't pursued. Some stuff, I guess I can speak on with a little bit more of personal experience. But I would say that where possible, and that obviously depends on what your idea is, if it's kind of a big product that needs manufacturing or if it's you selling a service. Where possible, if you do have any kind of savings, or, if you were made redundant, if you got maybe a payout, and you can put a little bit of that aside, then that's always a good first option. I think it speaks volumes when you are willing to invest in yourself before you try to ask anybody else to invest in you. You really need to show that you're backing yourself. And I think that also forces you to think through what you're doing and whether you're actually willing to commit your own money to the cause. And then if that isn't an option, which for many people it isn't, if you've got friends or family around you that may be, again, able to back your cause a little bit, can be an option. Not everybody has that. Not everybody is willing to take money from friends and family either, because sometimes it comes with strings and we don't always want the strings. But I think probably the thing that has been most impactful for me, and this was when I was writing, was crowdfunding. So when I was writing my first book, I very irresponsibly just kind of quit my job, went off traveling, did the hippie thing, and decided to write a book, and then came back and I decided I was going to publish it. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized actually that's going to cost quite a bit of money to do it properly, to get it edited and proofread and to get the book jacket designed and everything. So it was around that time, it was 2013, and Kickstarter had just come to the UK. Are you guys familiar with Kickstarter? As a
I think so, yeah.
Platform?
Yeah.
So there was a big educational piece, I'll be honest. I think now there's more people that are familiar with it, but essentially what you do is you create a campaign. You normally make a little kind of promo video, I guess, and say, right, this is what I want to do, this is my idea. And it's not always business products. Sometimes they're artistic products or projects. So in my case, it was a book. I was treating it like a business, like this is something I want to keep doing. And you create packages, and then people pledge money to those packages. So it could be anything from just pledge £1, and every little bit of money helps. You don't really get anything except like good karma for doing that, but £1 is £1. A lot of people were willing to give that away, right up to invites to the book launch party with an overnight hotel stay, and obviously signed copies of the book. So typically it's products of the business that you plan to make, or the idea that you have, or the project you're doing. And it's basically a way of doing pre-orders. But I think the thing that's really cool about it is that was a way for family and friends that want to support you to do it in a mechanism that feels a little bit less like a handout, I guess. And then you've got all of the users on the platform itself. And I think the ratio is something like 70-30, so probably like 70% of the donations that you get will come from people that you know, and the other 30% just come from complete strangers. Like I had, it was really random. I had this guy who's a chef who'd been imprisoned for fraud in the US, who just like backed the campaign and wrote me. I know, right? It was really, really random.
Okay.
So you got all kinds of weird and wonderful people, but you can then basically see the pledges going up, and then the more people see that a project's got a good amount of pledge towards a goal, then it's encouraging, like, okay, this looks like it's going to meet its target. But what's really cool about it is the funding is all or nothing, so you really have nothing to lose, right? Because if you think about something like I don't know, if someone's making a watch, I think I bought a watch on Kickstarter once, and they need a minimum amount to do a minimum manufacturing run. If you don't hit that amount of the target, then the project doesn't get funded and nobody's money gets taken. So, and you can exceed your target, and then you can add like bonus levels and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool in that way, because it gives a good mechanism for people to pledge money, but they don't actually part with the money unless the project goal is met. And then it's incumbent upon you to deliver against that. But I think it's a same as doing like pre-sales. And so for me, I raised just shy, I think, of £6,000, which was amazing, because then that allowed me to have the book done properly, to pay for it to be edited, to be proofread and stuff, and make sure you're putting out your best work. So there's other like crowdfunding type platforms where you exchange, instead of just like sort of monetary pledges, it's actually in exchange for shares and equity in the company. And obviously for something much bigger that's got bigger, I guess, aspirations, then that might also be an option. But those are the things I think for me put you at the least amount of debt up front, I guess, because everything is pledging towards like a future goal, or you're relying on savings that you already had. There's obviously ways to fund things if you go into loans and things like that.
Well, I think that's when I was looking at this online, and it was talking about, I think it was Forbes was talking about this article of how to raise the money, and they're saying that's one of the big things, is not piling on a lot of debt before you even see a return, because so many companies, or when people step out, I don't say there's so much competition, but we don't realize how difficult it is to get something off the ground. Like someone starts a restaurant, you're like, great, I'll go and have some food, but you don't realize like all the money that they've pumped into it. And I just really like that social media, or things like crowdfunding or peer-to-peer funding, which is people going to people who have money and shopping their idea, and then people will give money to those ideas and help them to get off the ground. It's just becoming more accessible in the 21st century. And I really like that it's allowing people to be more entrepreneurial, because I think before, without social media, it's very difficult to find those people to connect to, or to connect with your uncle or aunt in Australia who wants to support your book, but you might not have the means to do it. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think for people starting a business, I think they have to just kind of make sure they're in it for the long haul, because I think sometimes we get this kind of glamorized version of an entrepreneur presented to us, and we see someone who is financially stable, we see someone who is in power, we see someone who has control, and we might think, yeah, I want that. But what we don't see most of the time is all of the graft that it took to get there. Like, we don't see all of the failed ideas, we don't see all of the failed businesses before they made the one that we know of, you know? So I think people trying to invest in their business should maybe understand that it's going to be a couple of years of the small money that you might earn from it going back into the business before it's going to be a certain a certain source of income, or even like excess income or anything like that. So I'm with you guys in like the Kickstarters and the crowdfunding and all that stuff, because I think that something works for everyone. For me, I would have to probably just get another job, because I'm the kind of person that if I want to do something, I'll just save for it, because I just want to spend my money on it. Like, the idea of being in debt like really bothers me and really freaks me out. So I hope that I never have to be in debt. But sometimes there are other people who are really comfortable with that idea. Like when they run out of money and they're like, okay, well, I'll just take this loan. And they're really comfortable with that. They don't mind paying back. They don't mind paying back interest. But those kind of things just scare me a little bit too much. So I'm on the side of even right now, I would, I'd deliver boxes for Amazon. I'd stock shelves at Tesco's just so that I could live comfortably and also fund my my business idea at the same time.
So do you mean all debt? Like mortgage, student loan, or is it just all debt? You're going to stay away from all debt?
All of it.
Okay.
Yes.
I think it's definitely something to be mindful of. I think the difference between there's different types of debt. So when you do the Kickstarter, for example, you have to think through, how much money do I actually need? what am I going to use it for? Because you have to put all of that on your campaign page. You have to be really transparent. Otherwise, nobody's going to back your project. You have to think through, okay, even if I have all these, in this case, it was books. I have all these books and I'm going to sign them. How much is it going to cost me to ship them? How much is it going to cost me if I to ship a book to Australia because I've got a backer in Australia? So it forces you to think through the mechanics of it and think that you're spending. And I think what you're saying is really important, but I think it comes because people don't think through and plan. Most businesses don't have a profit for a very, very long time. So it's a little bit, these kind of, I guess, get rich quick schemes that people, or, these side hustles that people think, oh, I just need to make a product, make a little site, run a Facebook ad, and then magically I'm going to wake up in the morning and there's going to be £10,000 in my bank account. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, because I'm sure it does, but those are the exception and not the rule. Actually, it takes a lot of hard work, a lot of planning to have financial sustainability while you're not making any money. And to then have that foresight. You're not meant to be really taking money out of your business, including a salary. Most people that start their businesses don't take a salary to begin with, because that's just how it goes. And so you have to rely on funding from somewhere else. And I think the other thing that is really great that you were saying is that crowdfunding or like equity crowdfunding, where you give away a bit of a share in your business, or peer-to-peer lending, is much more accessible than many other traditional forms of finance. So when you start looking at, I guess, bigger ventures and getting angel investors, which is kind of people who've got a lot of money who want to put into projects, or whole funds and venture capitalists and stuff, it's such a tight network. It's so very difficult to break into, and it's not impossible, but it is difficult to break into. And when, as I understand it, I've never tried to pitch for it, but from people that I know, it's very difficult first to get in the room. But second of all, when people are assessing an idea, they're assessing the idea as much as they're assessing the person that wants to execute it. And so we've spoken many times on this show before about the difficulties that we have as highly melanated people. If you look statistically, and I don't have hard numbers to quote you, but these, they're quite easily found facts. Women underfunded as business leaders. If you look at the statistics, people from highly melanated communities underfunded. So in some ways, I feel like crowdfunding and things like that really level the playing field, because you literally can reach out to your peers, to your community, and beyond it as well. But some of those barriers that maybe lay in the way to traditional ways of funding business are removed, and it's also a lot faster. So the Kickstarter, you can run it. I mean, you can set the length of time the campaign runs. I think I ran mine for 30 days, and they say kind of don't run it for more than 60 days or so. And they say typically within the first 15 days, I think within the first 2 weeks, most projects are funded. And if they're not funded by that point, they're unlikely to fund all the way. But that means, from deciding you're going to do the campaign, took a couple of weeks to get it ready, you could have, in 6 weeks, you could have the money basically and be getting on with what you're doing. Whereas to try and put together pitch presentations, even just, like I said, trying to get those appointments and then getting in and doing rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds of presentations and meeting this board of directors and this investor and this person, and still not coming away with nothing, feels like a lot of hard work to me, that is possibly for such little reward when there's so much inherent risk involved in business anyway.
And I was reading on prowess.org.uk, and it was talking about if you then have a fear of all this money that you need to find. Because like you said, I've seen people do crowdfunding online or GoFundMe, and literally it's been up for months and they're not raising the money that they need. And prowess.org.uk was talking about trying to leverage on the skills that you have that you can use to create your own product. So for example, if you do knitting or crocheting, or you offer admin services, or you fix things and you're a carpenter, skills that you can use to put online that might not need a lot of financial input at the beginning, because basically you are the product to a certain extent. And it made me think of Kira by London. I don't know if you guys know her. She's on Instagram, and I think she had a really interesting story. She's a fitness instructor, And she said when the first lockdown happened, none of her clients wanted to train with her online. They were just kind of like, no, if it's not in the gym, they'll take a pass. So what she started to do was use her Instagram, and every day she would do 1 hour free of workouts at midday. And then after about 2 weeks of doing it for free, she said she's going to do a short subscription for like £15, and she'll do one workout every day for 7 days. She didn't know how successful it was going to be, and she got like 9,000 people signed up to the subscription. I am one of them. And I've done the maths. It's over like £100,000 every single month that she's getting from it. And I thought that was a really cool way to kind of leverage on the skills that you have and use something like a pandemic to say, how can I use what I currently have, but think outside the box? But I think also what Marisha was saying and what Luanda was saying in terms of then it still doesn't mean that everything's home and dry, because she's now had to make sure that her product or her fitness can actually be different from other people, because since she did it, there are so many people who are copycatting off of it. So she's now had to bring it in, you know, merchandise and have 16 trainers online, and she's doing this and she's doing that. And she actually said it's actually quite exhausting. So I think that's something that I would say to people starting their own business, because my mum started her own business, and no one works as hard as you do when it's your business. Like, you give everything to this thing. So yeah, just be mindful of that. And yeah, hopefully it's successful, because I think so many of the things that we see now were started by people who had an idea and decided to run with it.
I think if you don't know, you're never gonna. I think if you don't know, if you don't try, you're never gonna know. And something like, is it Kira London? Did you say her name is?
Yeah.
What she's done is really smart, because when you're asking people to take a punt on someone that they don't know and they're unfamiliar with, it's a big ask. And a lot of brand building and a lot of relationship building starts with building that trust. So by having that, you know, I'm going to offer you something for free. Here's a taster that doesn't essentially really cost you that much money, especially if it's in a en masse like that. You know, if you're putting up a live class that I don't think there's a cap, is there, on Instagram Live of people that can tune in, then it's still just 1 hour of your time, let's say, for potentially how many leads, if you like. And as you build up that trust with people, then they come to rely on you and feel like, okay, I'm willing to part with money to do it. And I think it's, you know, it's a really good thing to do right now. People are adjusting to this new landscape that we're in, and people are adjusting things that you never thought that you would get online or have to get online. People are now having to adapt to it. I know people that were terrified of, like, I hate doing anything online and put my credit card details on. I just like live in perpetual fear of online credit card fraud. And like, guess what? Now you have to get comfortable with it. So I think anything that you can do to ease that and make people, like, for most people, like, I love going to the gym. So for me, working out in my living room sort of defeats the point of getting out of the house and just kind of having a change of scenery. But if we get locked down for 3 months, then you just have to deal with it, in which case you've got to find someone who can keep that motivation up at the same level that you get from the buzz of being in the gym. And so if you can recreate that, that's great.
Well, I want to ask Marisha.
I just started working out for quarantine.
Sorry,
well,
a lot of people just started working out.
Yeah, I wasn't an at-home person who worked out at all. Like, I had to be in the physical space of the gym. Otherwise, I'm like, I'm never going to do it. But with the first lockdown, I'm like, well, it's either I do nothing or I try and find a new way to adapt.
You just figure it out,
fill that gap. And I paid more than £15 for the gym. So it was really genius what she was doing. But I wanted to ask Marisha, if we're saying that businesses don't make a lot of money maybe for the first couple of years, how would you then say for people to kind of measure the metrics of whether they're moving in the right direction of their business?
So it's a really good question. I think that comes into the planning in the first place. So you have to understand what it is you're hoping to gain in exchange for that period of basically not earning any money. For a lot of businesses, a lot of brands, a lot of people doing personal service companies, it is about building a following, right? And I don't literally just mean, okay, we have pure numbers, right? You can have, 150,000 Instagram followers. That's great. We're talking about actual levels of engagement. How many of those people are actually regularly consuming your content, and therefore, I guess, basically it's the psychology of buying and basically building that trust, so that when you have something to offer them that they need to part with their money for, that they're almost primed to do it. I hate saying that because it sounds really manipulative, but that's essentially what it is. I have another hat as a person that works in advertising. That's essentially what it is. So you have to know really clearly what you're intending to do. So if, you know, you are building people up, and people don't like to be sold to just off the bat, right? It's like you hate cold callers when they call you up on the phone. It's like the online equivalent of that same thing. So I think having a really clear idea of what it is you're hoping to achieve, for some people that is a following and getting a list of potential customers, whether that's over email or whether it's a social following. For some people it's about, you know, people give away freebies in other industries as well. So if people are giving away free coaching sessions, or gave away, you know, I've given away free books and stuff because I know I've got more books coming. So if I can get you hooked on the first one and you liked it, maybe you'll buy the next one. And again, not everyone's in a position to always do that or to just do it, you know, so freely, but that's putting trust in people, and then they'll pay that back with trust. And so I think you have to know what your long-term game is, and that's what separates, I guess, people in the get-rich-quick schemes who go, oh look, we're getting locked down again. Last time it was really hard to get dumbbells. I'm sure people are going to want dumbbells. Let me go on Alibaba and like import dumbbells and like just sell them out, and that's fine. You probably will make money. It's the same as the people who went, let me get masks. Okay, let's bring in loads of masks. Everyone's going to want masks. So someone who was selling toilet paper for some ridiculous price at one point when there was the run on the shops, all of those things to me aren't businesses. They are get rich quick schemes. They are enterprising. I'll give them that. Like if you want to make a quick buck, but that's not building something sustainable. It's not building something long term, right? And building a business is a much longer term thing than that. So yeah, you just have to be really clear about what your long-term goal is and know that you're making steps towards that.
Marisha, you're out here knocking those eBay hustlers.
I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying know which camp you're in, right? Like for real, because honestly, anyone can do it. The internet is a wonderful thing. Even with the tea brand that I'm trying to work on. So I have Alibaba because I'm trying to work with a few people on some packaging stuff. And all of a sudden, like all of the tradespeople just start saying, hey, do you want mask? I've got this mask. It's got this surgical grade this and this HEPA filter here. And I was like, this got nothing to do with my core business or yours. Why are you trying to sell me face masks? Do you know what I mean?
That's
and
that's a madness.
But that's it. But people do things. I just don't think business is meant to be that transient, right? Yeah. It's the sort of. Do you guys remember Only Fools and Horses?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, it's the Del Boy of it. Like this week, this is the hot item that I can sell. Wait, this one's going to make us $1 million, and you'll just keep switching from product to product and product. And yes, those things solve problems, but that's not a sustainable business, in my opinion. And if that's what you're trying to do and you're trying to make a quick buck, have at it. If you're trying to do something a bit more sustainable, then that's not the way forward, in my opinion.
So, what would you say to people who want to like leverage assets? Because I was reading about some people actually will take money or equity out of their home or out of things that they have. When do you know that you've got this killer idea that it's safe to do that? Or would you say everyone's just kind of taking a risk to see if it happens?
I believe in measured risks.
Nice.
I believe in measured
calculated risk.
Calculated, yeah. No, that also
Everything
sounds really malicious for some reason.
Calculated.
Calculated risk.
You did this thing and it was calculated. That's why, because it's
cold and calculated and manipulative. No, I think it's very. First of all, you have to be in a position to do that, right? So you have to be in a position where you have a house, an apartment, a expensive car, I don't know, jewelry that you can pawn, whatever it might be. You have to be in a position where you're asset rich and cash poor that you can do that. I think I would be willing to do it again if there was a plan. So if I had looked at it and gone to Luanda's earlier point about people just kind of taking the money and getting themselves into debt without really thinking about, okay, well, what is the actual cost of this? Because it's not just what I borrowed, it's what I borrowed plus the interest over what period of time. What impact might that have on any other lending I need or any other finance I may need for anything else that's actually really critical to life that isn't my business. So yes, okay, you can take money out of your house, or I don't know, I don't know how it works with other assets. I'm just using the house because that seems like the most obvious one. I don't think it's about being risk-free, because I don't think that that's possible, but I think it's about being as calculated, but as meticulously planned as you can. So really working out, like, okay, if I take this money, at what rate am I going to be spending it, over what period, and at what period do I expect to start having a return, so that not only am I bringing my business back to zero, but then I'm actually able to repay back into the asset that I borrowed it from. And I don't think enough people will do that. And I think perhaps if you do something like a startup loan or any other kind of specific business funding, they'll ask you all those questions and they'll go through it with you. They'll make you have a cash flow forecast. They'll make you have a financial plan. So you have to do some of that thinking. When you have asset finance, they just want to, typically they want to know that you've got another source of income, usually, to actually be able to pay it back, or it's just coming out of your property and you can make your payments or whatever it would be. So I don't think the checks are as rigorous as to the validity of your business idea. And so I would probably go quite a way down the line of, I guess, product testing, whether that was kind of in, like I said, a free capacity, just giving away a few freebies, doing a few trial sessions to just see what the appetite is like, and include in some of that some discussion around pricing. So I think last year I did a 2-day tea tasting workshop where I got people to try the first wave of the teas for Leaf and Latte, which is the tea company I'm working on. And it was amazing because it was about the tea and the quality of the tea, but we also talked about things like packaging, and we talked about how much are you willing to spend? What are you willing to spend if you go to have a cup of tea outside versus tea that you buy to have in the home? And lots of things that I guess were assumptions on my part. Some of them were correct, but there was a lot of them I was like, oh, I'd never thought about it like that. And the psychology of what drives that behavior, and understanding that helps you to make better decisions. So I would want to go through a process like that before I then basically put my house on the line. Because if that goes, the business doesn't work out and the roof goes from over your head, you're in a very poor position, I think.
Well, this feels like at COVID, we're really giving people a chance to COVID's going to give people a real chance to be innovative and just know that there is a lot of funding streams out there if they want it, which is good to know.